Welcome back to That Dad Guy. Today we have another series about a person of interest within Canada, someone who's done great things, who made an impact, who is part of history. And before we get to that, we got to do a little bit of history itself. You know, where are we in the world? What's going on at this time? And what sort of impact did this person make as a result of what he did and his ongoing accomplishments within the country? We're specifically talking about Canadians. This time we're talking about World War I. So in World War I, there was a defining moment in Canadian history, and that was Vimy Ridge. The war in the Western Front was all done in trench warfare. You're talking about the Battle of Inches, and in France, in the area we're specifically talking about, there was a major battle going on. And up until 1917, the Germans really had controlled Vimy Ridge, and over 100,000 casualties just trying to take that one ridge between the French, Moroccans, their allies, the British. And then in April of 1917, the Canadians were put in place under the British were in the background, of course, and but this was the first time that all 4 divisions of Canadian troops were all together, and they were given the monumental task of taking Vimy Ridge. Now, Vimy wasn't the only area that the war was going on. Of course, there's a whole front area that was going on, and there was 2 other attacks that were happening simultaneously up and down this particular line. The French were attacking in one area, the British were attacking in another area, and the Canadians were given the task of trying to capture Vimy Ridge, get that back. They were using British artillery mostly, and for the week up until the battle, which took place on April the 9th, 1917, the artillery just bombarded that ridge, that area, to try to weaken the forces, to try to prepare the site for the Canadians to go. I'm going to be showing all sorts of different pictures up and above, showing different pictures of the men in the trenches as they did. There was a tunnel system that went through. That's how they got the forces to the front. Show you some of the equipment they're using for bombarding the line. And yeah, so this was a 4-day offensive. And it only took 4 days to take the ridge, even though it did take a number of years to even move centimeters on that. The line between the German trenches and the Allied trenches, some places were as close as 10 meters, 50 meters. Sometimes there was just big craters in the way, craters that had been put there by these new artillery shells that exploded on impact rather than digging in and exploding after. There was also trenches that they were building tunnels, but if you heard the Allies were building a tunnel, or the Germans had heard that the Allies were building tunnels, they tried to explode them underneath them to try to have cave-ins on the soldiers. So they created these big craters in the no man's land area between their two trenches. But on November the 9th, 1917, the Canadians went in. And one of those Canadians was Jeremiah Alvin Jones. He was born in Truro, Nova Scotia in 1858 on March the 30th. And when he enlisted on June 19th, 1916, but he lied about his age. He said he was 39 years old, when in fact he was 58 years old, going off to war to fight for the Canadians. He was a black Canadian, and he was put in the 106th Battalion, which was a rifleman battalion. He went to France on February 9th, 1917. That was his first time in action. And he was part of the invading force on April the 9th, 1917. The Germans had the Allies pinned down, had the Canadians pinned down with their machine gun areas, and he volunteered to go take one out. So he managed to get all the way to the machine gun nest. He lobbed in a grenade. He killed some of the Germans that were there. He captured some of the other Germans that were there. And he took the machine gun back with him. And he made the Germans that he captured carry it back for them. And when he got back, he left it at his CO's feet. And he said, "Is this thing any good?" He had done something that nobody else could do. He volunteered his time, his energy, and he saved countless lives. Now, during that 4 days, when the Canadians finally took Vimy Ridge and had a major coup, they lost 10,000 people either to death or to injury during that time. Small numbers compared to the 100,000 people that were wounded prior to that. But it was a big sacrifice. Almost 4,000 Canadians lost their lives just in those 4 days. And it's one of these things that it means a lot. I'm going to get back to Jeremiah Jones and his accomplishments too, but I just want to talk a bit more about Vimy. I had a chance when I was in France with my wife back in 1998. We came across Vimy Ridge, and it meant a lot to us. Vimy Ridge, after World War I, France gave a portion in perpetuity to Canada as a remembrance of it. They created this giant limestone monument. I'm going to throw a picture of that up there too. The two pillars represent Canada and France. This is one of only 2 national parks of Canada that are outside of Canada. There is another one in France as well, dedicated to Newfoundlanders. Newfoundlanders at the time were not Canadians, so they have their own monument there for those that had fought in France. But this particular one is just incredible. It's 250 acres of land. This giant, massive limestone sculpture is in the middle of it, and on it there are just under 12,000 signatures of all the Canadians that died during World War I that do not have a grave. So they were missing in action. Somewhere along the way they died, it got buried by explosions or what have you, all sorts of horrific things, but their bodies were not claimed and sent back to Canada for proper burials, so their names are etched on this monument. And when my wife and I went there, it was just an emotional time to go see this. They still have trenches that are there that you can go down in. Some of the sandbags that would have been there are now replaced with concrete. So you still have the look of sandbags, but it's amazing. There's tunnels that you can go in. There are specific areas that are mapped off. Please do not walk in these areas because the mines are still there from World War I. In 1936, this monument was erected, and almost 7,000 Canadians went to it. 50,000 people showed up for the unveiling of this monument. Since that time, we've had 2 Canadian stamps have been issued. One is this one in 1968, right here in the middle. And I'm going to throw a larger picture up so you can see that one. And then again in 2017, at the 100th anniversary of it, you can see Canada put out this commemorative booklet that has all the stamps from 2017 in it, and they have images of Vimy Ridge. They have the monument. You can see there the memorial in the middle. You can see what the trenches are now still looking like, and you can see the stamps that were issued. Both Canada and France issued stamps for this, and I'm going to put those up as well. Yeah, it's a great book. I'm going to get into that book in the future when I go into talking about the stamps from 2017. I'll look into that a little bit more. So let's get back to that. So I went to Vimy Ridge with my wife. That was the moral of that story, and it means a lot. There's a lot of great things that are happening in France that are memories of all the allies that are there. But this was a defining moment in Canadian history. When World War I was declared, when Great Britain declared war on Germany, Canada just went. We're under the British monarchy. They told us what to do when we had to do it, and that was what we had to do. In the Second World War, when Great Britain declared war, We waited 1 week before we declared war too. Now we did go, we did support it, and the king said it was up to the Canadian government, who were still at that time off on summer vacation. So they said we're going to wait till Parliament resumes and leave the decision to them. But as soon as Parliament went back 1 week later, they declared war, and we went. But it was more our decision, I guess, is what it was left at. Give you an idea of Canada's participation in World War I. This is still a little off topic from Jeremiah, but I want to give you some perspective of what went on. 67,000 Canadians were killed. 173,000 were wounded. We sent 620,000 members of military to fight World War I. 39% of them came back as casualties. In World War II, we had 42,000 killed, down from 67,000. We had 55,000 wounded, and we sent over 1.1 million people at that time. So when they said after World War I, this was the war to end all wars, even though it wasn't, we had another one very soon after. Canada and many other countries, including the Axis and the Allies, took heavy losses because it was trench warfare. The conditions were bad. They were using gas, mines. It was just a different kind of war than what had happened in World War II. Not to put anything on World War II, loss of lives were heavy in that one too. But World War I was something that the world had never seen as far as the destruction and what was taking place on the European soil at that time. So let's flip back to where we're at. Jeremiah Alvin Jones. So he did this amazing thing. He went in, he cleared the machine gun turret, he made it safer for Canadians to continue to advance on and help win that battle. And on April 12th, 3 days later, he was wounded and he was sent back to England. So the war was over for him, and he did his part in heroic fashion during that time. And his commanding officer recommended him for the Distinguished Conduct Medal. Fantastic. Only problem is he never got it. They never gave it to him. He was a black Canadian, and there was still segregation. They were still being treated differently as any other Canadian. And even though he was recommended for it and he did everything he needed to do for his country and to help his fellow man, he wasn't given that award. Now, he died in 1950 in Halifax without that award. But Senator Calvin Ruck, I'll put a picture of him up here, fought for that Distinguished Conduct Medal for Jeremiah, and he did it. He said he needs to get it posthumously. He continued to fight for it. He fought for it all the way up until 2004 when he passed away. So he never got to see that dream realized either. But on September 9th, 2000, the Last Post Fund erected a new gravestone with the full military honors for Jeremiah Alvin Jones in Truro. And in February of 2010, now we're talking only 13 years ago, February 2010, the Canadian government awarded the Canadian Forces Medallion for Distinguished Service posthumously to Jeremiah Jones. So almost 100 years after his accomplishment, 93 years after his accomplishment, he was given the credit that he so richly deserved. That century before, that his family should have had the opportunity to celebrate him for having all that time. He lived to be 92 years old. He had the memories of what he did at that time, and I'm sure anybody who's gone through the war, they don't want to think of the bad memories, but he did an amazing thing, and he helped put Canada on the map, to give us an identity, to say what was ours. Now, we didn't do it all alone. We didn't, British artillery was there. There were other people that had helped do it, but we did something that hadn't been done during the war before, and we were able to take a major site when there were two major losses by the British and the French forces at the same time. We took a key point, and the French government were forever grateful for that, and gave us that land to run as a park, and to help create those bonds. So I wanted to talk about Jeremiah Jones. He wasn't someone that I knew anything about. I've been doing a lot of research over the last week on different people, and for the last few days I've certainly been researching him. I've been researching Vimy Ridge, I've been looking at stamps, I've been looking at images, and he was one that I wanted to focus on this week. And hopefully you guys learned something about him too. It was new for me, and I've tried to do some things. My brother had asked me to take some notes after my last video on Henrietta Edwards, and so I've done that. I've jotted down a few notes, so hopefully I'm not looking at the computer. I've moved things around. I'm going to throw up some different images during this video, so you'll see some changes. Leave me a comment. Let me know what you think of this. Let me know what you think of this kind of series of videos that I'm working on now. I'm trying to focus on people that you may not have heard of before, and that have made an impact in one way or another. Henrietta Edwards and all her human rights activity was a huge part in Canadian history, and so Jeremiah Jones and his bravery also have played a part in Canadian history too, and deserves the proper recognition. So I am glad that whatever this is, hopefully it will get the word out about him and future things to come. So if you like it, make sure you subscribed, make sure you like, definitely leave me a comment so I know what you think of this. And if you have a couple of these stamps that I've been showing you, that'd be great. Let me know if you have them, if you like them. And maybe you've got suggestions of other famous Canadians that you want to hear about, or a different history and time. I'm open to some suggestions. I'm not saying I'm going to do it every time, but maybe there's someone you suggest that I didn't know about, so I'll do some research. That's the fun part for me. So thanks for subscribing, and have a great week. Have a magical week. What, Polo? You say like, subscribe, share, and tell all your friends?
Who's a good boy? Who's a good boy?
Bye.